What is a cold call? Why should you make them? And what do you say if you start? Let's have a whole cold call conversation here. And I'm going to go ahead and give y'all one of my favorite terms ever, and that's cold call cowboy. I learned that back when I was in my stockbroking days, and I had to make 300 dials a day. And we called ourselves in the bullpen the cold call cowboys because we knew what we had to do, and we did it. Plus, we had a little tick sheet we had to turn in. There was a little accountability involved. The basic mechanics of a cold call, it's you calling somebody you don't know. They don't have any relationship to you that you know of, and it's basically you looking for business. They may or may not be open to that, but that's what a cold call is. It requires an introduction. So that being said, let's look at how it works. The first thing I got to start with is the legal side of this. Because the government has gotten involved in phone calls, make sure that you're downloading the Do Not Call registry at donotcall.gov, and you've got a record of updating your file so that if the feds ever come tapping on your door, you can show them that you are compliant and that you have made every effort to be compliant. That also means if you call somebody and they say, I want to be on the list, that you can actually submit them to the do not call list on their behalf, or you can give them the information. So start with being compliant. All right, so now let's talk about what it means. You need some phone numbers. We used to have this thing called the phone book and the yellow pages, and you can still find that on things like, well, there's 1,000 different websites. You can pull up any phone call directory or any phone number directory, and you can start making phone calls. Extra credit if you find one that says it is do not call compliant, but that won't get you off the hook, so make sure you're downloading your files yourself. Now, as you're thinking about making these phone calls, you're going to have a list. You've got your do not call list, and then you're going to sit there and do this. You're probably going to look at the notifications on your phone, probably going to go to the bathroom 3 times, get some more coffee, and get in the way of making phone calls with every ounce of your being. That moment, my friends, is called call reluctance. Call reluctance means you have all the tools and all the information, but you do not want to make a phone call. And here's why you don't want to make a phone call. Y'all are afraid of rejection. And you know this. You are deathly afraid that you're going to call this stranger up and say, hey, this is Leigh Brown with One Community Real Estate. And they're going to say, you so-and-so, go straight directly to bleep, 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 and then hang up. And that may very well happen. I have been cussed at many times by strangers. What I have learned, though, in my medium years, they're not cussing at me. They're cussing at the phone ringing. And frankly, they were so irritated by something else in life, they answered it, because I also know that many people just don't answer the phone if they don't want to. Our phones now have this wonderful little option, decline or accept. Many people, when they see an odd phone number, hit decline. It's more likely that you're going to get a voicemail than that you're going to get cussed out. So first of all, know your stats and know that you're probably not going to get cussed out, but it might happen. So as you start to set that expectation, you're also going to know it's going to take a lot of dials before you find somebody that wants to hear from you. That might be 10, it might be 20. In fact, it's one of those reasons I mentioned those little tick sheets earlier. If you start watching your tick sheet, you'll start to realize that if out of every 19 phone calls you get to talk to somebody, then you know how many phone calls you're going to have to make to get to the next person. Although, spoiler alert, if you get 3 in a row, now you know you're going to have to make a blue million before you get to the next nice one, and that's fine too. That just happens. So when you're thinking about the mechanics of this, you're keeping your tick sheet, you're going to make a phone call. Well, what do you even say? This is probably the biggest hang up most salespeople have with making cold calls. What am I supposed to say, Leigh Brown? What's my script? And then you're also going to tell them you don't like scripts. That's fine too. So here's how it works. You're going to pick up your phone, make an outbound phone call. And if they answer, which is rare, you're going to say, hey, this is Leigh Brown with One Community. Although I recommend you use your name and your company, but at all times, first name, last name, company affiliation. And you're going to say, I'm a local realtor. I was just calling to see if I could answer any questions for you. That's my favorite script. I like offering them the chance to ask me any questions. I'm not going to call and say, oh, the market's moving. Who do you know that's moving? Just please don't be icky and gross. The main reason you make cold call is to make connections. So if you're using old icky scripts, you probably are not going to connect as quickly as you thought. Now, if I get somebody on the phone that says, actually, I do have a question. What's going on in the market? My next question is going to be, well, which angle are you talking about? Residential, commercial, land? Are you talking about property management? Are you talking about buying or selling? Which angle are we considering here so that I can probe a little bit before I start rambling? I do know a lot about real estate in Cabarrus County, Concord, Harrisburg, Kannapolis, Mount Pleasant, Midland. I know this stuff. They probably don't want me to have a dissertation for 30 minutes about it. They probably have a very specific reason they're asking. For most people, it usually involves, well, there's this house down the street, and then they tell a story that they may want you to bring an answer for. That's a lovely phone call. Sometimes when you say, hey, this is Leigh Brown with One Community, they will say ugly things and hang up. More frequently, I'm going to go to voicemail. Now, I know that when I go to voicemail, the chances of them listening are fairly slim, and I know this because I don't always listen to my own voicemails. I prefer to just call people back, but that's how I'm wired. If I get the voicemail, I'm going to say, hey, this is Leigh Brown with One Community Real Estate. I was just touching base to see if I could answer questions about the market. Did you catch anything there? Exactly. It's the same language whether I got them live or on voicemail, but I'm not going to be icky and gross. I'm not asking for a piece of business. I'm trying to start a connection. That's the whole point of this, y'all. The point of your cold calls is not to get a sign in a yard. It is not to sell something out of the gate. It is to start a conversation, which may or may not lead to business today. It may lead to business 8 years from now, and that's okay too, because I would love to think about my business as a long-term expansive opportunity to serve through real estate. Now, as I start making those phone calls, you'll find that after the first phone call, the second one's easier, third one's even easier. And then you run into the jerk. And when you run into the jerk, you're going to want to quit and go home and sit on the couch and curl up. You cannot do that. I want you to keep going and don't stop until you're on a high note. I like finishing my phone calls with somebody that made me feel pretty useful and helpful, who had a question for me I could answer, or even ask me something I didn't have an answer for that I could go do the research, and now I am a more equipped realtor. That's usually when I stop my phone calls. What I will tell you is this. Your competitors are not going to do this. Most of the people watching this video, they're not going to do it either. You're going to give me all the excuses. Well, Leigh, nobody talks on the phone anymore. People like to text. Or you're going to say you're too busy, or it's too loud, or you don't have anybody to call, or you don't know what to say. Whatever excuse you're going to give me, I'm just going to say is straight bunk. What you should do, find a phone number and call it and say hello. That's how you make it in sales, y'all. And because your competitors won't do it, those of y'all that are watching this that have some fire left in your belly and say, you know what? I'm going to make real estate bigger. You're going to go pick up the phone and make 5 phone calls. And that's 5 more than 99% of your competitors are going to do. Which means as you continue to get into this disciplined, persistent habit, you're going to talk to more people about real estate. That builds your name reputation, that builds your brand in the market, and it also builds up your knowledge base as you continue to get smarter and stronger. All of those things build your business. So here's what I'm going to tell you. Couple of rules of the road. Don't make cold calls before 8 a.m., maybe 9 a.m., depending on where you are. Don't make them after 6 p.m. because I'm not a nighttime phone caller. Some people are, but that's not me. I don't make cold calls on Saturdays and Sundays. You might be different. Here in the Bible Belt, Sunday's not a good time for cold calls. Afternoon might be all right after somebody has finished their nap. I don't do evenings because too many people have family things to deal with. They're chauffeuring kids around or they're managing supper. I just don't want to be a pain. I tend to go for working hours since most people now don't have a landline. They have a cell phone. And so the number you found is likely to be a cell phone and could ring at any given time. So just be cognizant of that fact as you're thinking about making phone calls. But the most important thing I'll leave you is this. It's one thing to think about it. It's another thing to set up for it. But it's next level to do it. So drop me in the comments if you find yourself to be successful at this, or if you've tried it for the first time, I will give you a high five right back. And whatever help you need getting going in sales, I got you. Leave me a comment, send me a message, and check out some of the other videos right here.